Okay, so in question 4.3, they've actually given you the first transaction, which you can see on the screen currently, where they have indicated what the document number is, whether it's original, what the journal number is, and then the accounts, debits, and credits, as well as the accounting equation. Now you have to do the remaining for the other transactions. So we're going to start with the transaction on the 4th. So the date there is the 4th. Who can tell me what is the document number that we have to type in here based on the information they've given us? Okay, so what's the document number, guys? Okay, so on my page, I don't have a document number, but that's because there were some typos last year. In your textbooks or the new ones, it should have given you a document number of 22, so it should be credit note, which is CN 22. Okay? Do all of you guys have that? Okay, who can tell me if I receive a credit note from my debt? Okay, so returned one faulty cartridge bought from Choice Toys. So I'm returning something to my supplier. Do you think this will be original or duplicate document? Okay, so Tomilo says this is an original document, and that's correct. So when I deal with my supplier, the documents I receive is originals because they give me the document. So it's an original document. Okay, now what journal do we process any credit transactions with a supplier that relates to a return of goods? And which journal will we enter that information? Okay, so Helder saying the CAG, that's correct. So CAG, we will add this information. Okay, so that's the basic information so far. Now we have to look at what is. Okay, so what information do we have? So they tell you we've returned one faulty cartridge. Now, which was the previous transaction. Now, if I return inventory, what amount am I going to debit or credit? Okay, so I'm just going to repeat this. If I return something to my supplier, what accounts will I debit? What accounts will I credit? Okay, so Tomato says we're going to debit creditors control. Okay, so we debiting creditors control because we are decreasing that value with the amounts that we've returned. Okay, and what are we going to credit? We're going to credit trade inventory. Okay. Where do we take the VAT amount? So for the first transaction, we showed that when we purchase inventory, there was VAT implication. Now, if you return inventory, there's also a VAT component. where do you think the inventory will go? The VAT will go. Okay, so you think we credit VAT? Okay, that's correct. We credit VAT. Now, normally you would think it's supposed to be input VAT, but we said because of the fact that initially input VAT is the VAT we've claimed, but because we're returning it now I have to pay over that VAT to SARS. So now it's an output VAT. Okay, when I return the goods. So it's on the opposite. So where we initially debited input VAT, now we're going to credit the VAT component, but it now changes to output VAT and no longer input VAT, because when I return the goods, I have to pay that VAT back to SARS to sort of net off what I've already claimed previously. Okay, so that is the accounts that are debited and credited. Now we said one cartridge is 80 Rand, and that's excluding VAT. Now, what amount will we put under assets? Okay, let's start with creditors control. Under which column does creditors control land? Okay, so Bernice said under assets we've got a negative 80, because that was my first question. So it's a negative 80 for the trading inventory. Okay, trading inventory is an asset. Where does creditors control go? What category is creditors control? Okay, creditors control is it an asset, owner's equity, or is it a liability? Okay, so it's a liability. Now the question is that creditors control, will that amount be inclusive or exclusive of VAT? Okay, Tumelo, there were 4 printers, but we only returning one if you read number 4. So they only say there's one faulty one. So I haven't returned all 4. I'm only returning one of the 4. Okay, so that's why we're only dealing with one. So my question, I'm going to repeat it. When we look at creditors control, will that amount be inclusive or exclusive of VAT? What do you guys think? So the amount I paid the creditor, did it include VAT? Yes or no? Okay, so Tumelo thinks no, the creditor's amount does not include VAT. Anyone else? Okay, let's take an example. A creditor is similar to a supplier. So let's say I go to Pick n Pay. When I buy that Coke from that supplier, Pick n Pay, do I pay VAT for that included in that Coke's price? Yes or no? So when you go to the shops and you buy a Coke, okay, so Bernice says yes. Now, in this instance, it's exactly the same. When you bought the printer cartridges, you paid VAT included in that printer cartridge. So when I return it for the price including VAT. So I take the amount that it cost me and I return it for that price. So what now happens is my amount under liabilities needs to include the VAT percentage. So that's why I multiplied with 1,15 to get to 92 Rand, because the supplier's amount was inclusive of VAT. Okay, and that means the difference is the VAT component, which goes to output VAT. Now we said output VAT is a liability, so I'm going to increase the liability with 12 Rand, which is the difference between the 92 and the 80 Rand. And if I add these two together, the net amount is 80. So my right-hand side equals my left-hand side. Okay, so that's how you know with the VAT component that you have actually accounted for it correctly. Okay, so let's try number 9 again. Let's practice again. So number 9, we said we purchased the following from petty cash. PCV 17 was issued. Now, as soon as you see like a PCV or you see a DJ, that tells you the document number. Okay, so our document number based on the information here is PCV 17, okay, on the 9th. Now, when I purchase from petty cash, do you think I'm going to have original or duplicate documents? You can just type original or duplicate in the chat function. So if I buy things from petty cash, do I have original documents or do I have duplicate documents? We've got original documents, that's correct, because I actually received the documents when I did the purchase. Which journal is related to petty cash? What journal do we use for petty cash entries? Okay, so PCJ, which is your petty cash journal, which I don't even have in here. Okay, let me quickly just add it here. Just see where I typed in the information. Okay, so petty cash journal. Okay, so we've got petty cash. Now we said from that petty cash, we bought 4 paper reams at 22 Rand each. It excludes VAT, and 3 lever arch files at 20 Rand, 1 Rand each, also excluding VAT. Okay, so now the first question is, based on the information they've given us, what account will we debit, what accounts will we credit? Okay, so what will we debit? So it's either 1 or 2 accounts. So what will we credit? It's either 1 or 2 accounts. You just need to decide which side is VAT. Okay, so let's start with what did we purchase? What items did we purchase? Okay, so Tumelo thinks it's trading inventory. Okay, so Tumelo, trading inventory is something that we buy with the intent of reselling it. Now, normally you would buy inventory on credit, you won't buy it from petty cash. The things we buy from petty cash is generally, like Denise said, stationery. Okay, so the lever arch files and the paper reams, we're not going to resell it, we're generally going to use it. So in this scenario, this is actually stationery. Okay, so we're debiting stationery, which is an expense account. What are we crediting? Where did we take the money from? So where's the money coming from for the stationery? Okay, so petty cash. Okay, where do you think the VAT component is going? Is there VAT on stationery? Yes or no? Yes, we have VAT on stationery. Now, because it's the expense, we claim the input VAT back from SARS. So input VAT is an asset, so we're increasing it by debiting it. Okay, so now there we've got the accounts for our entry. Now, stationery, we said is an expense. Under which of those three columns, assets, owner, equity, or liability, will we account for the stationery amount? Okay, so Bernice, stationery is not an asset, it is an expense. If you go back to learning unit 2, expenses fall under owner's equity, like Tumelo said, so we account for it under owner's equity. Now, stationery decreases our owner's equity because we are actually giving away some of the money that relates to our owners. So how we work it out, we said it is 4 paper reams at 22 Rand each, plus 3 lever arch files at 21 Rand. So you should get, okay, and that's excluding VAT. Okay, did you guys get that amount? So that's how I worked it out. I took the 4 paper reams, multiply with 22, the 3 lever arch, multiply with 21, and I've added that together. Now the petty cash is an asset, but what physically goes out of our bank, we're decreasing our asset, but we said what we pay includes VAT. So now I take that 151 and I add VAT. That's why I multiplied with 1,15. Okay. So where does the difference go? The difference now goes to our input VAT, which is a positive towards our assets. So we take, okay, let's just make it a negative VAT. Plus 151. So the input that we will receive is 22,65. And if we highlight those two together, you should get a net effect of a negative 151, which is exactly the same as what's on the right-hand side. Okay, so I see we're almost done for today. So I'm going to stop here and then you guys can work through the rest of the transactions. If you've got an old textbook, on the 17th, just change the 9,300 to 9,121. Okay, so Nakanta asked, the 22,65 is for what? That is your input VAT here, Nakanta. That is the VAT that I'm going to claim back from SARS. Okay, so that's the VAT component. Do you have any other questions on the transactions we've done and how you work out the VAT versus the non-VAT and the balancing? Okay, so Tumelo, on page 106 in the 2020 textbook, it should have been changed in the new one, but just check the guys that have the new textbook. The transaction on the 17th. The value of the laptops, inclusive of VAT, should be 9,120 and not 9,300 Rand. Okay, otherwise you're not going to get to the correct answer. Tumelo, did you get that? Or do I need to repeat it again? Okay, so do you guys have any other questions for me before we finish off the session?